It was one of those misty nights in Seattle when the city outside seems to melt into itself, fog and drizzle turning every window into a watercolor painting. My apartment on Capitol Hill was filled with the low hum of a streaming rom-com and a soft golden lamp glow. I'd wrapped myself in my thickest fleece blanket, socks pulled high, the kind of cocoon you build on a solo night. In my hands was a chipped blue mug, my favorite, though the handle had a crack, filled with chamomile tea and honey. My life had settled into a rhythm lately, working long days at the nonprofit, cozy nights like this, video calls with my best friend Emily, and, of course, Tyler. Tyler had appeared in my world with all the quiet confidence of someone used to being liked. A project manager at a tech company downtown, big on old-school manners and spontaneous bouquets. He'd made Seattle, so often grey and lonely, feel bright for the first time since my move from Denver. That night, as the clock ticked close to midnight, I was scrolling mindlessly through Instagram when my phone buzzed with that cheerful ping, the special one reserved for Tyler. I grinned, because he always left voice messages, claiming that texts can't carry real feelings. He was a little old-fashioned that way, which I found endearing. Without thinking, I hit play. The sound of his voice, deep, familiar, soothing, spilled into the room, and for a moment I closed my eyes to savor it. But then, his words crashed into me, sharp as broken glass. I can't stop thinking about last night. You looked so good. She has no idea. I froze, my smile fading, fingers tightening around the mug until the crack in the handle dug into my skin. For a split second, I wondered if I'd misheard, if maybe he meant something else. But then came the next line, delivered with lazy certainty, the kind of voice I'd trusted 100 times. I'll tell her I'm working late again tonight. Can't wait to see you. There was a long silence after that. The audio ended, but the words didn't fade. It was like the air in the room had changed, the warmth replaced by a sudden, hollow chill. I stared at the phone, still glowing with Tyler's name, as if maybe a second message would arrive explaining everything. Some innocent twist, a joke gone wrong, anything but what I knew was true. Instead, the city outside seemed to go even quieter. The patter of rain on the glass felt distant now, and the scenes on TV blurred into a meaningless collage of color. My cozy living room, a place where I'd laughed and napped and danced barefoot to silly pop songs, suddenly felt like a stranger's house. For a few minutes, I couldn't move. My mind was split in two, half clinging to the Tyler I'd known, who left sweet notes tucked in my lunch bag, who remembered my dog's birthday, who called his mother every Sunday, the other half, cold, logical, replaying his words again and again. She has no idea. Who was she? My brain knew, of course, but my heart refused to accept it. Eventually, I set the mug down, wincing as I realized I'd been gripping it so hard my hand ached. My thumb hovered over the message, wanting to replay it but also wanting to throw my phone out the window and pretend I'd never heard any of it. Instead, I just sat there, in the darkening apartment, and let the weight of those words sink in. I thought I'd cry. Or scream, maybe. But the only thing I felt was a kind of numb clarity, a distant ringing in my ears. Tyler had sent the message to me by accident. There was no a maybe-er about it. I was the wrong recipient. He had someone else, someone he was meeting while telling me he was stuck late at work or helping a friend move. And all the tiny doubts, the weird late nights, the unfamiliar perfume on his jacket last week, suddenly, they made too much sense. I pressed play again, this time listening not with hope, but with a clinical detachment. I memorized the tone, the little laugh at the end, The way he sounded so utterly sure that his secret was safe. I saved the message to my phone, then, on some strange autopilot, forwarded it to my email. I had no idea what I'd do with it, only that I needed to keep it. Maybe for proof, maybe as a line in the sand. Maybe just to remind myself I hadn't imagined this. Then, I set the phone face down on the coffee table. I was done for tonight. Or, at least, I wanted to be. But Tyler's voice kept echoing in my mind, looping endlessly in the silent, rain-soaked Seattle night. And somewhere, deep down, I realized this wasn't just the end of a peaceful evening. It was the start of a story I'd never meant to write. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, the message replayed itself, like a cruel riddle I couldn't solve. I wanted to believe there was some other explanation, some harmless misunderstanding, but the words were too clear. I had always imagined that betrayal, if it ever came, would announce itself in some dramatic, movie-like way, a shattered vase, a lipstick on a collar, a public confession. Instead, it came as a voice message, a little digital whisper that stole all the color from my world. I spent hours staring at the ceiling, listening to the muffled city sounds, the hum of distant traffic, a siren somewhere down Pike Street, the rain tapping out its own sad song on my window. At some point, I realized the TV was still playing, looping a rom-com I used to love, but now the laughter felt hollow, like it belonged to someone else's life. My phone sat face down on the table. I was almost afraid to touch it, half expecting it to buzz again. Tyler, maybe, asking something casual like "Did you see the Mariners score? Or want I take out tomorrow?" That's how things had always been. Simple. Easy. Safe. But now everything felt like a performance. Even in my own apartment, I was suddenly aware of the gap between the life I thought I had and the reality pressing in around me. Sometime around 4 a.m., I got up and wandered to the window. Seattle glowed, city lights smeared by rain. I watched the night buses trundle by, carrying strangers to destinations unknown. I wondered how many other people were awake, clutching secrets in the dark. By morning, I had a plan, not a big, dramatic one, just a script for how to get through the day. I would act normal. I would not text Tyler. I would not ask questions I wasn't ready to hear answered. I made myself a 2-strong coffee, forced down a granola bar, and dressed in my Apowry outfit, navy slacks, a soft white sweater, a delicate necklace my mom had given me. The routine felt artificial, but necessary. My reflection in the bathroom mirror was almost convincing. No puffy eyes, no trembling lips. Just me. Maybe a little paler than usual, but steady. When my phone finally buzzed, it was exactly what I'd predicted. "Tyler, good morning, gorgeous. Hope you slept well. Can't wait to see you tonight." I stared at the words, feeling the irony like a blade. I forced myself to type back, light and casual. "Me, morning. Hope your meetings go fast. What should we do for dinner?" As soon as I pressed send, I felt sick. But I knew why I did it. I needed him to feel safe. I needed him to believe I was still in the dark. That recording was my secret, my leverage. In a strange way, it gave me a sense of control. If he was going to lie, let him do it while looking me right in the eye. All through the workday, I played my part. My team at the nonprofit was busy prepping for our annual fundraiser, so no one noticed I was quieter than usual. I answered emails, made phone calls, even managed a half-hearted laugh when my colleague Bridget told a story about her toddler's latest adventure with finger paint. I wondered if anyone could sense that something inside me had shifted, or if heartbreak was as invisible as I suddenly felt. Lunch was a blur, a takeout salad from the little spot on Broadway, eaten in the break room while my mind replayed Tyler's message again and again. Each time, I caught something new, a pause, a half-laugh, the unmistakable confidence of someone who believes he'll never be caught. I wanted to feel angry, to let the betrayal burn hot, but all I felt was a kind of cold curiosity. Who was she? How long had this been going on? And, more pressingly, how many other times had I missed the signs? Back home that evening, I tried to find comfort in routine. I took my dog, Baxter, a grumpy rescue beagle, for a walk around the block. The rain had finally eased, leaving the air fresh and full of the smell of wet earth and pine. Baxter, oblivious to human drama, sniffed every tree with deep dedication, pausing only to look up at me with those big, questioning eyes. Inside again, I brewed tea and sat on the sofa, phone in hand. I scrolled through old messages from Tyler, rereading his declarations of love and future plans, trying to spot the moment when the truth started to shift. Had he always been this person? Or was it something that happened gradually, so slowly I didn't notice until now? The silence in the apartment felt different. Not empty, exactly, but full of things unspoken. My mind replayed 100 small moments, Tyler's offhand explanations for late nights, the unfamiliar perfume on his jacket, the way he sometimes guarded his phone like a secret. It all clicked into place now, a pattern I'd refused to see, dots finally connecting. But I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I tucked the recording away, safe on my phone, and backed up to my email, a quiet weapon waiting for its moment. Tonight, I just needed to breathe. To remember who I was before Tyler, before secrets. I let the city lull me, let Baxter curl up by my feet, let the gentle drip of rain become a metronome for my thoughts. Tomorrow, I promised myself, I would start looking for answers. But tonight, I would simply survive. That week moved in slow motion. I went through each day as if I was walking underwater, everything muffled, my senses sharpened and yet distant at the same time. I started to notice things I would have once dismissed. Tyler's patterns, his phrases, every smile that seemed just a little too practiced. On Tuesday, Tyler came by my place after work. He brought takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant and a bottle of cheap, sweet wine that always made me giggle. He acted as if nothing in our world had changed. He kissed me hello, his lips soft, lingering, then spun around to complain about the traffic on I-5, as if he hadn't detonated a bomb in my chest 2 nights earlier. I found myself watching him the way an actress might study her scene partner. When I laughed at his jokes, I listened for a hint of guilt in his voice. When he scrolled through his phone on the couch, I wondered who he was really texting. He'd always seemed like the kind of man who had nothing to hide. He left his phone on the counter, screen up, password simple. Now, though, I noticed how he kept it a little closer. When I got up to grab more napkins, I saw him tilt his phone away from my eyes. I didn't ask any questions. Instead, I tucked away every little detail, every hesitation, every slightly too careful explanation. The world around me felt like it had changed its color palette. Everything was a shade or two off. I kept the mask on, made the small talk, and smiled when he wrapped his arms around me, whispering, "You're my girl. Oh, don't ever forget that." If only he knew how true that was, how I was holding on to his every word. That night, after Tyler left, I sat in my dim living room and scrolled through his social media. I noticed things I'd never paid attention to before, The way certain women's names popped up in his comments, the late-night likes from people I'd never met. There was one name that kept appearing: Sarah. She was tagged in a few group photos, always at some work happy hour or a team-building event. Her profile picture was all confidence and red lipstick, a city skyline behind her. Something about her smile made me uneasy, though maybe that was just my own insecurity looking for a target. The next morning, I found myself walking to work beneath low, grey clouds, Seattle's chill seeping into my bones. My thoughts spun with questions I was too afraid to voice. I wondered, when did I become this person? Someone who spies, who doubts, who second-guesses every word? Before Tyler, I'd been sure of myself, even stubborn. But now, everything felt unsteady, as if one wrong move could send the whole illusion crashing down. At work, I went through the motions. Our annual fundraising gala was 2 weeks away, and there were endless spreadsheets to check, emails to send, calls with donors to make. I buried myself in tasks, hoping that business might muffle the ache. At lunch, my best friend Emily popped into my office, 2 lattes in hand. Earth to Allison. "You look like you haven't slept in days," as she said, settling onto the edge of my desk. I forced a smile. Just a lot going on. Gala season, you know. Emily eyed me carefully. She'd known me since college and could read every flicker of emotion in my eyes. "You sure that's all?" I hesitated. The words felt heavy, caught in my throat. I wanted to tell her everything, to spill the whole ugly truth right there over our overpriced coffee. But I stopped myself. Not yet. Not until I had real proof, something undeniable. "I'm okay," I said quietly. "Just tired." She squeezed my hand. "Well, you know where to find me. Just don't let all this non-profit drama eat you alive. Promise?" "Promise." That night, as I cooked dinner for one, I played the voice message again. Not because I wanted to hurt myself, but because I wanted to remember exactly how he'd sounded, so calm, so sure, so convinced of his own safety. I replayed every word, every pause, searching for some crack in his armor. Was there any regret? Any guilt? No, only the sly warmth of a man enjoying his secret. I found myself growing colder inside. Not the kind of cold that comes from sadness, but from something sharper: resolve. I wouldn't let this break me. If Tyler wanted to play games, then I would be the one to decide how they ended. I started to plan, not revenge, not exactly, but something close to self-defense. Over the next days, I watched more closely. When Tyler claimed he was working late, I noted which nights Sarah's posts went up from bars downtown. I scanned his texts for new excuses, watched his body language, his expressions. It wasn't about paranoia anymore. It was about clarity, about finally seeing things as they were, not as I wished them to be. The hardest part was pretending nothing had changed. I became an expert at small talk, at soft laughter, at texting him sweet nothings while my heart guarded its own secrets. Sometimes, in the quiet before sleep, I'd let myself remember the early days, when falling for Tyler had felt like tumbling into sunlight, all hope and wonder. Now, even hope had a shadow. But I wasn't ready to give up. Not until I knew the whole truth. I owed myself that much. The following week, I moved through my life like a secret agent in plain sight. It's remarkable how quickly you can become 2 people at once: the pleasant girlfriend who answers texts promptly, and the silent observer gathering clues no one expects you to see. My morning routine didn't change. Same coffee order at the corner shop, same 10-minute walk past Volunteer Park, same quick chat with Mrs. Lassen and her overexcited golden retriever. But inside, I felt like I was living someone else's script. Tyler's routines, too, took on new meaning. When he said he was working late at his office in South Lake Union, I paid attention to the details. Did he sound hurried or relaxed? Did he send a selfie from his desk, or just a vague running late, sorry babe? Each interaction was a small puzzle piece, and I was determined to put the whole picture together. I started checking his social media more deliberately. It was easier than I thought. Tyler wasn't exactly the para-nerd type. His Instagram was public, filled with hiking photos, brunches, and group shots from work events. The comments section was a goldmine. Sarah's name kept popping up, as did little inside jokes, half-hints, emojis, references I couldn't decode but which clearly meant something to them. I noticed a Friday night story, a boomerang of a clinking glass, Sarah's perfectly manicured hand visible, Tyler tagged in the corner. He hadn't mentioned any plans that night. The more I looked, the more the cracks appeared. Tyler started slipping up in little ways, once telling me he was at her strategy meeting downtown, then appearing in the background of someone else's rooftop photo, obviously somewhere else entirely. Another time, he said he was exhausted from all these budget calls, but later, Sarah posted a snapshot of the two of them at a Mariners game. Half their faces pressed together in the stands. My stomach twisted, but I kept my face impassive, even when we FaceTimed later and he yawned, saying, sorry, babe, rough day at work. I wanted to scream, to confront him, to lay out all the evidence and watch him scramble for an explanation. But I didn't. Instead, I kept the charade alive, matching his energy, letting him believe I was exactly the trusting, loving girlfriend he'd always known. There was a perverse kind of power in it, in knowing the truth while he spun his lies, watching him perform for an audience he didn't know had changed. On Wednesday, he invited me out to dinner, a spontaneous gesture, a kind of performance for himself as much as for me. We went to a cozy Italian place near Pike Place Market, a spot we'd claimed as the hoursy early on. Over pasta and wine, he held my hand, talking about the future, about trips we'd never take and houses we'd never share. I played along, my voice steady, my laughter easy. But under the table, my phone was recording, capturing every word. When he went to the bathroom, I stared at my reflection in the window, watching the raindrops chase each other down the glass. I looked the same as always, but I felt so different, stronger, somehow, even as my heart broke. If Tyler could lie this smoothly, so could I. That night, as we walked home under his umbrella, he squeezed my hand and said, I'm so lucky I found you, Alison. I almost laughed. If only he knew. Later, alone in my apartment, I made a list, a real one, in my journal, with dates and times. Every lie, every unexplained absence, every odd message or photo. It was more than just a way to track his movements. It was proof, for myself as much as for anyone else, that I wasn't imagining things. Still, I craved certainty. Late one night, after another of Tyler's work events, I took a bold step. Using a throwaway account, I messaged Sarah. I kept it vague, just a friendly, hey. Noticed you and Tyler have been at a lot of the same events. Are you too close? Just curious, I work with him too. It was a risk, but I needed something concrete. She didn't respond for a couple of days, and I almost gave up. Then, on Friday, I got a reply. Har har, yeah, Tyler's great. We do a lot together for work, and sometimes outside work too, lol. Are you new at the company? I stared at the screen, my heart hammering. I wanted to ask, are you seeing him? But I knew that would tip my hand too soon. Instead, I let the conversation fade out, satisfied that at least part of my suspicion was real. The next day, I followed another trail, this time on LinkedIn, tracking down Tyler's work calendar. His boss, Janet, posted regular photos of their team. One picture caught my attention: Tyler, Sarah, and two others, all at a wine tasting event in Woodinville. The same night Tyler had texted me, just heading home, maybe FaceTime if I'm not too wiped. There was no way to spin this as innocent. But still, I didn't confront him. Not yet. I wanted everything lined up, no room for doubt, no escape hatch for him to crawl through. Instead, I focused on living my life around the edges of the secret. I ran more, let Baxter pull me through muddy parks, called my sister back in Denver and talked about anything but Tyler. I even started going to a pottery class on Thursday nights, a quiet rebellion, something just for me, just to remind myself I was more than this story, more than a victim. Through it all, the voice recording stayed on my phone, my invisible shield. Every time Tyler kissed me, every time he promised me forever, I remembered that message, his true voice, the one he'd never meant for me to hear. And I promised myself, when the time came, I'd make sure everyone heard it. The waiting was agony, but it was also power. And I was almost ready to use it. After 2 weeks of double lives, the exhaustion began to morph into something else, a calm I almost didn't recognize. It was as if all the pain and uncertainty had crystallized into a new kind of focus, one that let me move through each day with measured, deliberate intent. The hardest part was that Tyler still acted as if nothing was wrong. His routines, his affection, the way he sent me random memes in the middle of the afternoon, all so ordinary, all so infuriating in their normalcy. But behind the scenes, I was a different person. I became obsessed with the details. I noticed how he wore the same dress shirt on certain days, the ones that lined up with the late meetings. I started keeping screenshots of his Instagram stories, cataloging the overlap between his timeline and Sarah's. The evidence was becoming undeniable. One night, after he'd told me he was working late reviewing project specs, I scrolled through Sarah's public Facebook profile. There, posted an hour earlier, was a photo from a trendy rooftop bar in Belltown. Tyler was in the background, his smile relaxed, his hand casually draped over the back of her chair. The caption read, "A team wins and rooftop vibes." My chest tightened, but my hands didn't shake. This was the final piece of the puzzle. The next day, during my lunch break, I dug deeper. I found more photos, Sarah and Tyler at a Mariners game, side by side at a work charity gala, standing close in a group shot at a vineyard outside the city. Each image added to the new reality, replacing my old memories with ones I was never meant to see. It was strange. I thought I'd feel anger, or the sharp pang of jealousy. But what I felt was closer to resolve. If Tyler thought he could live two lives, so could I, at least for a little while longer. I started rehearsing my own script, how I would act, what I would say, when I would finally reveal what I knew. That weekend, Tyler suggested a day trip to Bainbridge Island. He was charming, attentive, the perfect boyfriend. We wandered through art galleries, sipped overpriced lattes, and watched the ferries glide across the grey-green water. He took photos of me by the docks, telling me how beautiful I looked in the chilly sunlight. I smiled for the camera, my face betraying nothing. In the quiet moments, though, I studied him. The way his eyes flickered when he got a text, how he excused himself to take a work call by the waterfront. When he returned, he was extra affectionate, as if overcompensating for the guilt he didn't know I'd already seen. That night, back in my apartment, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let him control the ending of this story. I would choose when and how it would finish. Over the next few days, I began to gather my courage and resources. I copied the voice message to a backup drive, just in case. I collected every screenshot, every photo, every piece of evidence into a neat little digital folder labeled a truth. It was almost clinical, the way I organized it all: dates, times, locations, side-by-side comparisons. If Tyler ever tried to gaslight me, to twist the facts, he wouldn't stand a chance. At the same time, I played my part flawlessly. I responded to his texts with my usual warmth. I laughed at his jokes on the phone, agreed to weekend plans, sent him funny photos of Baxter napping in ridiculous positions. I wanted him comfortable, unworried, right up until the moment I pulled the rug out from under him. But it wasn't just about Tyler anymore. I found myself curious about Sarah, too, not out of spite, but because I needed to understand what I was really dealing with. Who was she to him? Was she just another work friend, or did she know she was part of a triangle? Did she know about me? I went back to the message I'd sent her from the throwaway account. She hadn't replied since our last exchange, but she kept posting photos, some with Tyler, some solo, all with the kind of confidence that made it clear she wasn't hiding. It dawned on me that she probably had no idea I existed. In her world, Tyler was free. Available. Just another eligible guy at the office, full of charm and inside jokes. That realization hurt more than I expected. For a moment, I wondered if I should just walk away, block his number, delete his photos, start over. Would it be easier to vanish, to leave him with the mess he'd made, without ever giving him the satisfaction of a confrontation? But then I remembered the feeling of his voice in that message, the way he'd laughed at my expense, so sure he was untouchable. No, I decided. He needed to see the consequences. It was around this time that the invitation arrived, a group dinner at a friend's apartment in Fremont. Tyler mentioned it offhand one night, while we were making dinner together. "Oh, by the way, there's a dinner at Sam's next week. You'll come, right? Sarah and the rest of the crew will be there." It was perfect. The universe, it seemed, was handing me my stage. That weekend, as I shopped for a new dress, I felt the first real surge of excitement I'd had in weeks. Not the nervous kind, but the kind that comes from knowing you're about to reclaim your story. I picked something simple but striking, deep green, flattering, with just enough drama in the cut to make an impression. I practiced what I would say in the mirror. I imagined the moment, the looks on their faces, the silence when the truth came tumbling out. I was nervous, but more than that, I felt powerful. No more waiting. No more pretending. The ending was in my hands now, and I was ready to write it. The days leading up to the dinner felt electric with anticipation. I went through the motions of daily life, answering emails, checking in with my team at the nonprofit, taking Baxter for evening walks in the crisp Seattle air, but inside, every thought circled back to that approaching night. I had rehearsed what I wanted to say a dozen different ways. In the end, I realized it wasn't the words that would matter most, it would be the proof, the irrefutable truth that Tyler himself had handed to me, never suspecting it would become his undoing. On the morning of the dinner, I woke before sunrise. My nerves buzzed, but I felt oddly calm, as if I'd crossed some invisible threshold. After a long shower, I pulled out the green dress I'd bought and hung it by the window, letting the watery Seattle light reveal its subtle shimmer. I chose every detail of my outfit with care, not for Tyler or anyone else, but for myself, a reminder that I was the main character in my own story again. At work, I kept busy, scheduling meetings, confirming gala plans, sending out donor thank yous. My colleague Bridget noticed my focus and teased, "What's got you in superhero mode this week, oh?" I just smiled, feeling a quiet satisfaction she couldn't possibly understand. When I got home, I slipped into the dress and did my hair in soft waves. My heart pounded as I tucked the small portable speaker, the one I'd borrowed from my neighbor, into my purse alongside my phone and a fresh tube of lipstick. The voice message was already queued up, ready to play at a moment's notice. As I zipped the bag closed, I looked at myself in the mirror and saw someone I hadn't met in a long time, confident, unbreakable, fully in control. Tyler picked me up right on time. He looked handsome, all pressed shirt and easy charm, humming along to a playlist of indie rock as we crossed the bridge to Fremont. "You look amazing, babe," he said, squeezing my hand. I smiled and said thank you, watching the city lights flicker in the window. He had no idea what was coming. Sam's apartment was already buzzing when we arrived. Laughter, clinking glasses, the soft undercurrent of music and chatter. I greeted familiar faces, hugged friends, shook hands with new ones. Sarah was there, radiant and self-assured, her red lipstick matching the bright flowers in her hair. Tyler introduced us, and we exchanged polite smiles, both performing the roles we'd been cast in. Dinner was lively and loud, everyone trading stories about work drama and Seattle's unpredictable weather. Tyler played host, topping off wine glasses, cracking jokes, anchoring the conversation like the star of his own show. For a while, I just watched, noting the way Sarah's laughter lingered on his words, the casual touches that might have gone unnoticed by anyone not looking for them. But I was looking. Every detail mattered. When dessert was cleared away, Sam raised his glass for a toast. To friends, old and new, and to never letting the rain get us down. Laughter rippled around the table. Tyler stood to at his own, glass raised high. And to trust, right? The foundation of every good friendship and relationship. A murmur of agreement. The kind that comes from people who have no idea a storm is about to hit. I took a deep breath. My hands were steady as I reached into my purse and pulled out the speaker. My voice, when it came, was clear and strong. "Speaking of trust," I said, meeting Tyler's eyes, "I think it's time everyone heard something." The room quieted, conversations trailing off as I pressed play. Tyler's voice filled the space, unmistakable. "I can't stop thinking about last night. You looked so good. She has no idea. I'll tell her I'm working late again tonight. Can't wait to see you." The silence that followed was absolute. Faces turned from me to Tyler, from Tyler to Sarah. Her cheeks flushed deep crimson. Tyler's expression crumbled from confusion to horror in a single heartbeat. For a long, breathless moment, no one moved. Then Sarah pushed her chair back so suddenly it scraped the floor. She stood, eyes bright with anger and hurt, and walked quickly from the room, her heels echoing on the hardwood. Tyler called after her once, his voice desperate, but she didn't look back. The rest of the group stared, not knowing where to look, some with pity, others with quiet understanding. Tyler tried to speak, but the words got caught in his throat. He looked at me, reaching out as if for help, but I was already standing, slipping my purse over my shoulder. I hope you remember this the next time you talk about trust, Tyler, I said quietly. I walked past the stunned guests, through the apartment, and into the cool night air. The street was slick with rain, the sky heavy and dark, but I felt lighter than I had in weeks. As I walked away, I didn't check my phone or look back at the apartment windows. Whatever happened next, the apologies, the excuses, the aftermath, was his problem, not mine. I was already moving forward, step by step, toward the life I'd almost forgotten I deserved. The night air in Fremont was sharper than I expected, carrying with it the sounds of distant traffic, the pulse of rain dripping from awnings, and a deep, echoing quiet in my chest. As I walked away from Sam's apartment, I didn't feel triumph, just an immense sense of release. Each step felt lighter, as if I was shedding the weight of every secret, every half-truth I'd carried these past weeks. For the first time in ages, I breathed without effort. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I wandered the neighborhood, past late-night cafes and shuttered bookstores, letting the cool drizzle soak into my hair. My phone buzzed over and over. Tyler, friends from the party, even Sarah at one point, but I let it ring, unwilling to let anyone else's panic dictate the shape of my night. I ducked into a quiet coffee shop, ordered a chai latte, and settled by the window, letting the city's hum fill the silence. When I finally made it home, Baxter greeted me with sleepy enthusiasm, his tail thumping against the door. I knelt to hug him, feeling his warmth and the simple, honest affection only a dog can give. I stayed on the floor with him for a long time, my dress bunched at my knees, forehead resting on his soft fur. The world felt wide open, unsteady but full of possibility. The next morning, I woke to a barrage of notifications, voicemails, texts, missed calls. Tyler had started with apologies, then moved on to explanations, and finally, desperate pleas. The messages came in waves. Tyler, Allison, please, let me explain. It's not what it sounded like. Can we talk? Tyler, I messed up. I know I did. Please, just give me a chance to make this right. Tyler, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I'm lost without you. I deleted them without listening past the first line. Each message was a reminder of the ways he'd underestimated me, the ways he believed his charm and quick would always be enough. But I'd outgrown the version of myself who needed his attention, his validation. Now, I felt only relief at the silence that followed my refusal to reply. Throughout the day, messages from mutual friends filtered in. Some expressed shock, some support, a few offered their own stories of betrayal and survival. The story of what happened at Sam's dinner spread quickly. Seattle was a small town in all the ways that mattered. Word traveled. Suddenly, Tyler was no longer the golden boy, no longer untouchable. Sarah messaged once, just a short line, no accusation, no anger. Sarah, a thank you for letting me know the truth. That evening, after a long walk in the rain with Baxter, I allowed myself a moment of mourning, not for Tyler, but for the future I'd imagined with him. I sat at my kitchen table with a glass of wine, letting the memories play out like an old movie. Our first date at Pike Place Market, lazy Sundays in bed, quiet confessions over takeout. But even the sweetest memories felt distant, faded by the knowledge of everything that had come after. For the first time in weeks, I slept deeply, undisturbed by dreams or doubts. The voice message, once a curse, had become my liberation. I was no longer haunted by suspicion or fear. The truth, as painful as it was, had set me free. The days that followed were quieter than I'd expected. Tyler's calls tapered off, replaced by the silence of someone who finally understood they had lost. Friends continued to check in, inviting me to happy hours, movie nights, hikes in the green spaces that ring the city. Slowly, I let them in, allowed myself to be distracted, to laugh again. I started to reclaim the routines I'd lost in the chaos. Pottery class on Thursdays, Sunday morning runs around Green Lake, new books from the little shop on 15th. I called my sister in Denver and told her the whole story, every twist and heartbreak. She listened, then told me she was proud, that I'd handled it with courage and grace. Her words settled over me like a warm blanket. At work, I felt sharper, more present. I threw myself into the gala preparations, poured my energy into building something real, something lasting. The team noticed the difference, and Bridget started calling me a boss mode Allison, joking that I was finally back to my old self. Every now and then, I would catch myself smiling at something small, a perfect cup of coffee, sunlight through my kitchen window, Baxter curled up at my feet. It was a quieter happiness, softer than before, but it felt more genuine. I was no longer living in someone else's story, no longer waiting for the other shoe to drop. Tyler became a ghost in my life, a lesson learned, a story retold at gatherings, his name met with a shake of the head or a rueful laugh. Sometimes I wondered what would happen the next time we crossed paths in this city of overlapping circles. I imagined myself calm, composed, no longer tethered to the girl I'd been when I first fell for him. In time, the betrayal lost its sting. I realized I'd gained something far more valuable than revenge or vindication, the unshakable knowledge that I could survive heartbreak, that I could choose myself and come out stronger on the other side. I didn't need closure from Tyler. I had written my own ending, and for the first time, it was exactly what I needed.